Welcome to my podcast where we discuss various topics related to Quebec and Canadian real estate. In each episode, I break down a different topic to help you be more informed. In this episode number 5, we're going to talk about step 4 of 8 in our process to successfully purchase your next home. And this is an exciting one. This is where we're going to start your property hunting. So if you've listened to the previous episode, so we talked about step 1, which was knowing your cost and doing your financial budget plan. Step 2, we talked about defining your needs and writing down a list of everything you're looking for and defining what is a need and a want. Step 3, you got your pre-approval, and now you're ready to start doing your property hunting. Okay, so right off the bat, I'm going to say this is going to be the longest step. So depending on your market, depending on the type of property that you're looking for, it can take a month, 2 months, 3 months. Maybe it's going to take you a week. Maybe it's going to take you a year, right? So you have to be very patient. And unfortunately, people that are not able to be patient often are the one who are going to do a mistake and then eventually regret it, okay? So you have to be very patient, but at the same time, you have to be passive aggressive. So when you do find a deal that makes sense for you and you really like the property, you got to be able to move fast. You can't start having doubt. This is why we did step 1. Now you know what your costs are, you know what you can afford. You know what you're looking for exactly, what are needs and want. So if you did step 1, 2, and 3, it should reduce any type of hesitation when you're actually going to find a deal, right? So you have to be patient, but at the same time, you have to be aggressive when the time comes, or else you're going to lose out on some potentially good deal. So use what you did in step 1 and step 2 to help you stay grounded, right? So that's a key here. Now, you're going to have to see if you're going to work alone or you're going to want to work with a realtor. So if you're going to work with a realtor, they are going to bring experience. So experience in the neighborhood that you're looking to buy in, or experience in the type of property that you're buying. So if you're buying, for example, a condo and you're dealing with a realtor that's experienced in that type of property, that is going to be beneficial for you. If you're a first-time home buyer, then working with somebody that's done, a dozen and 100 of transaction, they're going to help you avoid any costly mistakes. So it is something I strongly recommend you. Also, depending on the realtor that you're going to work for, so you got to interview a few on. They're going to help you limit the emotional decision. And if you heard me talk about this in previous episode, the reason why we did step 1, 2, 3 is to help limit the emotional aspect of the decision making, and a realtor can help you, be emotionally detached from the situation so that they can provide you, insightful recommendation. And I'll give you a story that happened to me. So years ago, I was helping clients search for their first home. So they were newly wed, and they were looking for their new property. So we I think it was the first property we visited, and we went inside. We were visiting. Throughout the visit, they were super excited. So you can tell that they really wanted the property. They really liked it. Even the realtor of the buyers noticed it. It was hard to hide their excitement. And so we finished the visit. We left the property. We're going back to the car, and the first thing they both told me is, "We really like the property. We want to make a $15,000 above asking price. We don't want to lose it, Joe. Let's make it happen." So I said, "Guys, let's hold off a second. Let me speak with the seller's broker and see, do they have current offer on the table? Have they been getting a lot of visit? Let me investigate and come back to you with a game plan. Okay, let's not jump right away into something that you guys might regret." So I had a conversation with the broker, and there was no offer. And there was no sign of potential offer being put that day. So I came back to my buyers and I recommended to them, let's try making an offer 10,000 below asking price with all the other condition that they had, and let's see how it goes. And my sellers agreed. We did that, and the seller agreed to the offer. So they ended up paying 10,000 less than the asking price, and that's 25,000 less than they would have paid if I would have just followed what they were asking me for, based on their emotional decision and their excitement, right? So again, if you're working with the right realtor, they can help you limit some of that emotional aspect as well. So interview also a lot of realtor, just so that you're comfortable working with the person that you're working for, because you will probably have to work for a very long period of time with that person. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable. How are they paid? So how is a realtor paid? In my area, there's usually two ways they're paid. The first one, which is probably the international norm, is that the realtor that you're working for will be paid by taking a part of the commission of the seller's agent. Okay. So that's one form of a way they're going to be paid. The other way is they might charge you a certain commission fee that will be baked in your purchase price. So example, if you're buying a property that's 100,000, and in the agreement that you had with the broker, it said there was a 2% commission, you're going to end up paying 102,000 in that instance. And that $2,000, that commission fee, can be just paid at the time of the notary by yourself, or it could be included in your mortgage. That's really up to you. In my area, you can include it in the mortgage, so it's something that you just have to mention to your mortgage broker or your mortgage specialist. Okay. Also, don't think that the agent or the broker of the seller is going to be able to represent you. So especially here in Quebec, there's been a lot of regulation implemented in the last 24 months that really stipulates that the broker of the seller cannot also represent the buyer in the same transaction. So very important. They're might going to be able to fill up some of legal document with you, but understand that they're not going to be representing you in that transaction. Okay. Also, the last thing you need to know is if you are going to work with a broker, in my region, you're going to have to sign a brokering contract with them. That's been mandatory, I think, for the last 2 years. And that brokering contract is going to have a few elements. So in a future episode, I'll go over it. But for the purpose of today, know that it's going to mention the feature, the type of property, the price range that you're looking for. It's also going to mention a bunch of legal terminology about the broker's legal obligation. And then obviously it's going to give you details of the commission and how your broker is going to be paid. So that's the brokering contract that you will have to sign with your agent if you're going to be working with them to represent you as a buyer. I also recommend, doesn't matter if you work with a broker or not, be active in the process. So don't just rely on your broker to do all the work. Ask question, be curious, right? Because you're the one who's paying for all of this at the end of the day. So you need to take actively part in the process. Once you start searching, here in my region, so there's the MLS. So in the United States, they have their MLS.com. In Canada, we have MLS.ca. In Quebec, we have what we call centris.ca. So CENTRIS.ca. And it's basically the Quebec MLS. It's also connected to the Canadian MLS. So whatever property is added on Centris, it gets also added on the MLS. And these are all the property that are being sold by a real estate agent. So there's no FSBO on it. So any owner that are selling by themselves wouldn't be on that platform. So every property that is sold by a broker, which is usually the majority, so over 90% of the property are sold by an agent. So you will find them on Centris. And for FSBO, so FSBO is for sale by owner. Here in Quebec, one of the biggest site for FSBO is duproprio.com. I believe they're called Comfrey in the rest of the country. You have Kijiji, you have Lepac, you have also Facebook Marketplace. Okay, so these are all different websites that you could find property for sale by owner. Also note that even if you're working with a broker, if the property that's being sold is sold by an owner, not a broker, your agent can still represent you. Now, there's going to be some seller, which I never quite understood, that don't want any agent involved in the transaction or broker. Sometimes that's a bit shady, because if you're paying your broker as a buyer, and the seller doesn't want a broker in the transaction, you should ask yourself questions, right? Because I'm not sure what they're not paying for the service. You are, and if they're asking not to have any broker, I'd be weary, because there's might be something that those sellers are hiding. But know that if you're working with a broker, they can also represent you in transaction that doesn't involve another broker. Also, sorry, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but if you're working with a broker, have them set you up on alerts on the MLS. So whatever your criterias are, they're going to log in on their profile, and they're going to set you up on alert, and you'll be getting an automated email every time there's a new property that fits your criteria. You're going to get an email and you'll be able to see all these properties. So that way, you get notified the minute. Usually it takes, potentially maybe a few hours, but you'll get notified the day of when a new property comes on the market. So that avoids you having to, log in periodically throughout the day to see what is new, what's on the market, right? And like that, you reduce the risk of missing out on, potentially a good deal. So have that discussion with your broker and make sure they set you up on that. And also, spend time reviewing a bunch of listing, right? Whether that's on the MLS or for sale by owner. The more property you look at, the better you'll have an understanding of the price based on whatever region you're looking for. Okay, so that's really going to be helpful. Then we get into visits, and this is where sometimes people can lose a lot of time. So you got to be careful. I'll give you some tricks to avoiding too much of wasting your time and potentially your broker's time. So first off, picture can be very deceiving. So you might look at something that is very nice, but then you go visit, it's super ugly. And the other way around, you might look at some pictures, it looks ugly, but then when you go visit the place, you're like, I'm not sure what kind of camera they used to take the picture or whatever angle, but it's not as bad as I thought, right? So nothing will ever beat you going to visit the property. And potential, like hidden potential, you won't see that on pictures, right? You have to go and visit the property to see any potential hidden. So it's very important that you visit. However, before you want to visit, you want to do a few things to avoid you having to visit for no reason. And one of the first thing you should always do is review the seller declaration to help you make sure that there's no potential problem for you that's a deal breaker. And if there is, you will know in advance and you won't waste your time, trying to book for, a visit and then actually going to visit the property. So a seller declaration, I'll talk about it a bit later in this episode, but it is a critical document that you need to consult before you go visit. Again, if you're working with a broker, they will share with you a copy of the seller's declaration for whatever property that you might be interested. That's on Centris. And if you're looking at an FSBO, ask them if they've completed a seller declaration and ask them for a copy of it. Okay. When you do want to go visit a property, try to schedule several visits of property that's in the same area. So like if you're visiting a condo, if there's multiple unit being sold in the building, schedule a visit to go check, a few of those units. Same thing with houses. If there's a few house in the same block, try to schedule a visit around the same time, maybe with like a half an hour to 45 minutes interval. Even if some of those property you found less desirable, if there's one that you really like and there's a few around it that are less desirable, go visit. It's not a bad idea because, again, like I said earlier, the picture might not do it justice, right? So what you might find less desirable on a picture, you get there and it might not be as bad as you thought it was, right? So it's very important. It's going to help you save a lot of time. Don't go just out of your way to visit one property. If there's other property in the area that's close to it, try to have yourself or your broker schedule visits for the other property around the same time frame. Also, don't be surprised if you're looking for a plex, so that's a duplex, triplex, fourplex, especially here in my province, you might not be able to visit some of the rented unit until you have an accepted offer. So as part of the offer that you'll eventually make, that we'll talk about in the next episode, you will put a condition to visit the other property to make sure to visit the other unit, to make sure that you are satisfied. So I'm just bringing this up so that you're not surprised or caught off guard onto why you can't visit some of the unit. Also pay attention, real estate, we always say location. So pay attention to the neighborhood. Okay. I've had house visits where, I was working with buyers and the neighborhood, they wanted something quiet to raise their kids and whatnot, young couples. And the property was surrounded by like sixplex, all rental units around the street, the block. Long term, that might become problematic for you, depending on the type of tenants that are on that street. So again, looking at the street, maybe knocking on the neighbor's door, asking them question, play the detective. It's going to help you understand the neighborhood because remember, you're not just buying the property, you're also buying a piece of the neighborhood. So the nicest property in the crappiest of neighborhood is not necessarily a good deal. Okay, so it's very important to look at your surrounding and the neighborhood. Also, as I mentioned earlier, use the list that you created in step 2, that your needs and want, to help you stay grounded throughout the process, right? Because when you're going to start visiting, there's that emotion is going to take on, right? So you're going to remember that paper that deal that you signed with yourself is what do I really need, and what are some of the wants or the extra, right? So that list is going to help you stay grounded throughout this process. The last part that I want to touch on are some of the important documents that you're going to have to consult. So one of them I mentioned earlier, which is the seller declaration. I will have a full episode where I'm going to deep dive in the seller declaration. So I'll show you a real one and I'll explain all the section. But just for the sake of today's episode, what you need to understand is the seller declaration is a document that's filled up by the seller. And it's usually, if the sellers are working with a broker before the property is put on the market, they'll be asked to fill up that document and it will be made available to any potential buyers. And in that document, it's going to ask the current owner a bunch of questions, such as, how long have you been the owner? What kind of damages has there been on the property? What type of heating system you have? What type of plumbing? What type of renovation have you done in the last several years? So it's going to give you a rundown of the current state of the property, and it's going to give you a bit of history on the property. So like I mentioned earlier, if it mentions there's a huge crack in the foundation and the foundation is shifting and it's going to cost potentially $50,000, it might be mentioned in the seller's declaration. So if that's something that you do not want to get involved in, well, don't waste your time going to visit the property, right? So by you looking at that seller declaration, it's going to help you avoid wasting your time. So super critical to review that document before you even ask for a visit, okay? Some other critical document. So if you're looking for a condo or a property that's part of a condo association, so it's not just apartment that's part of condo association, they could be cottages or any other type of property. So there's a few documents that are super critical. The first one is the co-ownership declaration. So again, it's a complex document, which I'll talk about in a future episode, but it does mention a lot of key information that you will have to look at, such as, it's going to confirm the proportion of the particular property or unit that you're looking for, the proportion in terms of the co-ownership. It's going to mention about condo fees and all that good stuff, the rules of the co-ownership, a lot of other important element, which I'll talk about in a future episode. But it's very important to review that document. And notice that some of those, you won't be able to have access to them potentially until you make an offer. Sometimes they're made available, but sometimes they're not. So if you are buying a property that you weren't able to review those documents prior to making the offer, make sure you put that as a condition, okay? And that your realtor is going to be able to provide you some guidance on it. Again, if you're also looking for a condo, the other thing, and this is so important, it's financial statement. If you're buying a condo or a property that's part of a condo association, you want to know the financial condition of the building, because as you're not just buying your unit, you're like buying a share in an association. So you want to know what financial condition that association is in, and you want to know what may be coming. So if, like special assessments and other costs that you may have to bear once you become the owner, those are things that you'll be able to get some insight on by reviewing these documents. And the last one, the last condo document that you want to look at is the meeting minutes. So every time the owner association gets into meetings, whatever they discuss or whatever decision is made, they will record that in the meeting minutes. So super important for you to review so that you don't miss out on some critical information. And just to illustrate that, in the past, I was myself looking as an investor, I was looking for a cottage to be able to do short-term rental here in Quebec, okay? And cottages would be the last thing you would think of that would be part of an association, but these cottages that we're looking at, we noticed that there was some condo fees and they were related to maintenance of the street. So that was kind of odd. So when we did our research, we noticed that the street, so the condo was part of, not the condo, sorry, the cottage was part of a development. And there was a few cottages on sale at the same time, and they were fairly recent. So it was kind of odd why there were so many on sale. But we found out that the condo fees were for the maintenance of the road, because typically when you have a development, eventually the road gets passed on to the city. And in this case, it was never passed on. So the owner had to maintain the private road. And so they formed that association to be able to maintain the road and the cost. And so by consulting these meeting minutes, I found out that, there was a bunch of problems with the developers. The developer wasn't paying his due. The other owners were threatening to take legal action to take over because he had a few parcel of land that he still owned, but he wasn't paying for any of the condo fees, his proportion of the condo fees. So anyway, there was a lot of problem. We found out also that, through these meeting minute document, I was able to get hold of some contact information of some of the owners that manages the association. They were able to give me a bunch of other insightful information, such as the road wasn't legal, that's why the city wasn't taking it. So they're planning on having a bunch of special assessment. All the owners would have to pay a cost for a legal fee and all that stuff. So anyway. So I'll spare you maybe in another episode. I'll tell you the full story. But all that to say, if I did not do my research by looking at these documents, I may have just looked at the property, fell in love, let's make an offer, blah, blah, blah. And then, a few months after I've become the owner, I may have gotten a bunch of headaches, right? So again, that's why you want to do your due diligence before, you make your offer. So be a detective. And also the last document that might be of interest to you, if there is a previous inspection that was done, and obviously a fairly recent inspection, so maybe the last 6 months, that's going to be beneficial to also consult before you make an offer. Okay. So I know we covered a lot today. Thank you for listening. So I'll see you in the next episode where we're going to be talking about making an offer, which is going to be step number 6. Thank you for watching. See you next episode.